So I had 2 buttons. I'm going to tell you right now that one of them I completed and the other ended up as a test subject. Just like Norman. The Promised Neverland is a fairly recent series where 3 children discover that their beloved orphanage is actually a farm and they are being prepared like cattle for the slaughter. All 3 kids are very, very smart, but my favorite by far is Norman. Norman is the brains of the operation, and he's smart in a somewhat devious way. However, as Promised Neverland continued, it started to go downhill. Usually when I tell people what's up with Promised Neverland, I tell them that it wrote itself into a hole. So after watching the first season of the anime, I read the manga, so I was aware of how it goes before season 2 came out. However, when season 2 came out, apparently they skipped a lot and nobody liked season 2. So as a result, I see less passion for the Promised Neverland than I did before. And unfortunately, it has affected my perception of Norman. Norman had a pretty interesting thing going on where he started out as a main member of the group and then became distant. At one point, it appears that they're teasing that he will become a villain, which was like right up my alley. I really liked the depths that he was going to accomplish the plan. It was good. I really liked where it was going. He also appeared to be like terminal, like he was gonna die soon. We had that waved in front of us, and then suddenly he just wasn't. Like he wasn't evil anymore, and he wasn't dying, which is 2 things that would have made me like him more. I did some backtracking, and it turned out there was a cure given. It was specifically stated why he was not going to die, and also he wasn't actually evil. I never got super deep into the Promised Neverland, so this is not one of my best analyses. What I'm getting at is that I feel like Norman's character was wasted. Well, I keep saying evil, villain, bad guy. The word I'm actually looking for is morally gray. I liked that Emma was very compassionate all the way through. She eventually became compassionate to the demons as well, whereas Norman had more of a all-out policy, and he had grown to hate the demons. And it was an interesting clash of ideals. I liked that Ray and Emma regretted ever letting Norman go. And I think that if Norman had gone on to fully become a great character, that would have been very poignant, especially since his tendency to be more analytical was always there from the start. It's true, I like tragedy, and I'm always looking for tragic characters, so I admittedly think it would have been very poignant if Norman had perhaps died. If he had become a great character, and then died, and as his last act he had said, "Oh, Emma, you were right in the end, you know what? This is my final act." Explosion. Though I'm happy that he rejoined the group, I feel like he got there too quickly, and it would have been cool to see him become a bad guy. I mean, he didn't have to be, but you know, just something to pay off for the build-up. So I am fully capable of liking a character, but not liking how the series turned out. But it does definitely affect how much I want to dwell on the character. You know, if I only have that one thing to think about, that's really all there is. Whereas if there's something that I love the series and the character, I can spend my whole life here. So sometime last year, I was redecorating my bedroom and I was going a little merch crazy. I like to make pin boards of characters who I really like. And I saw these 2 really cute buttons. It was an easy buy. But because of the reasons I mentioned earlier about my feelings towards Norman now, I eventually decided to purge them as part of my collection. I listed them online and waited for them to sell. And it has been probably a year, and they have not sold at all. Which made me realize that other people probably feel similarly disillusioned about The Promised Neverland. So I thought that instead of having the pieces languish in my selling pile or lowering them to the point that it's not even worth my time, I thought I would customize them. Now, I am in the wonderful and unique situation that most of my favorite characters look exactly the same, but with a color swap. So I was looking at my Norman buttons and I thought, this sure looks like my unappreciated fave, Celine Bradley. So a video or two back, I showed off my doomed Ida bag. So in comparison to the Hanako bag, which is completely full, sometimes I feel kind of sad carrying this around. It flips over, and instead of being a beautiful masterpiece, it's like, what's that? So yeah, that was another reason I wanted to customize these buttons, is to get more Celine merch. And honestly, what better way to show my disturbing passion than by painting his likeness on a button? I start my projects with a watered down acrylic. I water it down to a milky consistency, and the reason for that is because if the paint is too thick and chunky, it's going to leave streaks and brush strokes. And with watered down paint, you're going to have to make more coats, but it'll be more of a smooth application. And the reason I'm using water is because these are water-based acrylics, so there's already water in there, I'm just adding more. On the side, you can see the button that became my test subject. I already painted on that to make sure I had an idea of what I was doing, so on this one, I'm essentially doing the same thing. I started by putting out my pure black and painting the parts that I absolutely knew I wanted to be pure black. So that would be his eyebrows and his eyes and some shadows on his hair. Afterwards, this is so that afterwards I could mix a lighter color and use that for values. And I almost forgot to mention, before painting, I sprayed with 2 layers of Mr. Super Clear. This is to act as a primer because Mr. Super Clear gives items some bite, and the buttons are very smooth. So with that primer on there, I was able to have the paint stick. At this point, I mixed up my light black color. I think in total I used only 5 colors on this button. Arakawa doesn't use a lot of values in her color work, which is great for me with recreating FMA stuff because that's something I don't have to worry too much about recreating. This took a lot of layers to make sure that the white underneath was covered up, but otherwise it was also a great opportunity to practice with my brush skills. I had just come off of doing my Dolphy Dream face-up project when I was working on this, and that video is not up yet. It'll be up in a little bit, hopefully. But yeah, that helped me become more familiar with my brushes, and by the time I was working on this, I was like, wow, look at how I'm able to fill in those bangs. No way. So this is the point where I had a problem or two to tackle. One was easier than the other. So the easy problem I had to tackle is what to do about his clothes, because Salim usually wears shorts, but Norman is wearing pants, and I didn't want to have to mess with that. So I decided to put him in his black suit, which is actually one of my favorite outfits of his. So I'm glad I was able to give that some representation, especially for my Ida bag. The other problem was what to do about the background. And this is what spelled doom for the button on the left, the test subject button. So my original plan for both buttons was that I would paint the background black and then I would put eyes and teeth on it and it would be his shadows. But since I was doing his outfit in black also, that gave me some trouble because I wanted it to not all blend together. That was when I got the idea to paint the second one purple, and this is what worked in the end. Maybe if I had painted the other one purple, I could have saved it. Maybe I could still save it now, but I don't really want to. The pose on the purple one ended up being way easier to paint anyway. But yeah, I considered a couple things with the purple background, like maybe doing a gradient, a couple purple, something more graphic. And in the end, I settled on just purple. And then you're going to see how I incorporated his shadows in the next section, actually. Wow, okay. So it looks like painting the suit was so stressful that I don't have any footage of it. But yeah, so to paint the suit, I just painted over with that lighter black color, added shadows where the shadows already were with pure black, and I also filled in the background so it is now 100% deep Kool-Aid purple. Now we are doing the shadows. Who is we? Now I am doing the shadows, and I realize there's two different kinds of shadows I'm talking about. So when I'm talking about the suit, I mean the places where the fabric is shaded. And when I'm saying the shadows, which is what I'm painting right now, I mean his true form. His lovely, beautiful true form. So yeah, I took pure black and I just did squigglies around his body. This is really what do you think looks good? So yeah, I did it around his feet, and then later on I'm going to add some more up in the corner. It was actually very relaxing to do this part. I painted in the white of the eyes and the pupils, and yeah, I enjoy doing this part. I also liked putting in his tiny little hands. Behold, the finished product. I think my one thing I would do differently is make it a lighter purple. It didn't seem that dark when I was painting it, and now that I see it finished, it is a little bit hard to see his shadows, so would have been nicer if I'd used a brighter color, but that's okay. To finish the button, I recently got some Tamiya clear acrylic gloss, so I put that on there in a couple coats. I'm hoping that will protect it pretty well, because I put this in my bag. I was thinking I would put it on the pin board, but I really like how the pin board looks, and this bag needs stuff. So I put it in the bag. It's been sealed with Mr. Super Clear and Tamiya acrylic. So hopefully it won't rub too much against the plastic and it'll be good. But I think it's really cute. I'm happy with it. I'm happy to see it in there. And yeah, that's kind of it. This was a pretty simple project, but I'm very glad I did it. Made me feel good about myself, made me feel like I did something. I'm happy to have more merch for my fave and merch that I made myself. It's a little tempting, now that I know that I have this power, I'm afraid that I might start looking for other merch that I can repaint, but I also hate having things that I don't want, so. And I already made a video about it, so what am I gonna do? I'd have to buy a bunch and then paint them all. Do we want that? No, we don't.